is a place in the United States where the corners of 4 states, Arizona, Utah, Colorado, and New Mexico, converge at a single point. People then travel from miles around to pay a fee to attain bragging rights for having been there. And while the enjoyment of trivial novelties is happening, most people don't think about the anthropological mystery that lies 2.5 hours southeast of them. In the inhospitable terrain of Chaco Canyon, there exist the ruins of a people who have been gone for 722 years, leaving behind the works of their hands for us to wonder at. The people of Chaco Canyon disappeared sometime between 1275 and 1300 after having lived there for hundreds of years. And while we do know many things about their culture and society, there remain many mysteries to be solved. Among the things that we do know is what they are called Anasazi. The word is Navajo and can either mean ancient stranger or ancient enemy. It's quite a cryptic word, which has been shrouded in mystery for a very long time. What does it mean? Stranger from where? Enemy of whom? There are no answers to this, of course. Nobody knows. But we do know that while they were here, they built an intricately complex and sophisticated society. We also know that in spite of Chaco Canyon being a place of cold winters, scorching summers, and holding a consistent annual record of 22 centimeters of rainfall, somehow these people not only survived, but they thrived. They lived here for hundreds of years with no sign of an issue. How? Remains an unsolved mystery. Many visitors to Chaco Canyon mention that the place itself seems to exude fear, as if the place itself had intent to harm. However, in spite of this, or rather in contrast to it, the buildings used by the Anasazi were well maintained and given a sense of beauty and care that still stands out to this day as one views them. They can be difficult to get to, however, as many parts of the settlements are difficult to navigate. Sometimes there are a series of walls that don't seem to make any logical sense. You will clear one wall simply to be faced with another. There are drop-offs, crawls, and climbs to manage your way through. What purpose did this serve? While the knee-jerk response is to credit this to the threat of enemy invasion, how would one expect a small child to make the journey? How would one get the day's food and water supply? It seems as though it would have been a Brobdingnagian chore. Although the journey through the village would have been difficult, there were impressive feats of architecture in the settlements themselves. There are single buildings with a base the size of the Sears Tower building. There are ceremonial chambers with whopping 90-ton ceilings. Chaco Canyon's Pueblo Bonito dates from the 10th century and stands 5 stories tall. It has 800 rooms. Sand Canyon Pueblo was built from a master plan sometime between 1240 and 1285 and has 420 rooms, 90 to 100 Kivas, or underground chambers. and 14 towers, and several buildings which are all enclosed in a stone wall. Many of the buildings have astronomical observatories built into them. On top of the question of how such an ancient people learned how to make such sophisticated structures that were well ahead of their time, we must also ask the question, where did they get their materials? There were more than 200,000 trees used in the making of these structures. The original working theory was that the Anasazi uprooted all of the trees in Chaco Canyon in concentric circles, making their way outward until there was nothing left. However, using element strontium to match the trees that were used to a location, which is more or less a paternity test for trees, scientists were more recently able to say with certainty that they came from the Chusca and San Mateo mountains. People may not bat an eye upon hearing that information. However, both of those mountains are over 50 miles from the Chaco Canyon settlement. What's more, the Douglas fir and spruce trees that were used for roof support hadn't grown anywhere near Chaco Canyon for at least 10,000 years, according to another test. The people of Chaco Canyon had built an elaborate system of roads, reaching nearly 400 miles and spanning some 30 feet across. When rough terrain was encountered, the roads simply went through it rather than around it. Is it possible that they simply cut down the trees 50 miles away and then used the roads to carry 200,000 of them back? 100 miles round trip? It doesn't seem likely. Given all of the mysteries of the Anasazi, it probably doesn't surprise you that they ended with just as much of a mystery as they begun with. Experts agree that sometime near the end of the 13th century, there had to have been a cataclysmic event that significantly affected the Anasazi. What that event was is the subject of endless debate. But whatever it was, it caused them to move to their cliff dwellings sometime around 1250. Some would say that the move was because there was a drought and water was running low. However, they had experienced drought before without having to resort to cliff dwellings. One significant drought had been experienced between 1130 and 1180. This was different. How they even reached these dwellings is a mystery in itself. Many have remarked that even using modern climbing equipment, which I should mention is not allowed, it would be extremely difficult or maybe impossible altogether to reach the dwellings. Yet that is where they lived. Logs with notches cut into them with an axe to use as a ladder have been found, some of them in place still. But this would not work all the way up. At some point you'd have to abandon the logs and use something else. Everything in their dwellings was left exactly as it would have been used during a normal day. It was as if everyone suddenly looked up, stepped out of their doors, and vanished. Some people posit, with weak evidence, that something turned sour politically and caused everyone in town to leave, taking nothing and never looking back. However, as I said, there is little to no evidence for such a theory. Others say that a nomadic tribe likely wiped them out, However, there is no evidence of the existence of nomadic tribes in this area in the 13th century. An interesting theory came about in the late 19th century on this issue. It was postulated that they might have turned to cannibalism. These claims were not taken seriously until the 1970s, at which point evidence began to be examined. There is a misconception that ancient cultures were all peaceful and got along well. This has made experts reluctant to give their voices to this issue. However, this utopian idea is a misconception. 1/3 of the world's cultures show evidence of having participated in cannibalism at one point or another. Some evidence of starvation, cannibalism, and warfare has also been found in ancient bodies discovered in the Chaco Canyon area. However, some dismiss these findings as having been caused by burial preparations. Some would say that they simply wandered off and became other Native American tribes over time. Indeed, traces of their culture can be found in the Pueblo Indians. They even have oral histories about the ancient ones, which they guard closely and do not share. However, even though their traces can be found in present-day tribes, that is not enough to prove that they packed up and left. One last theory. The Anasazi left pictograms on everything. Many of these are baffling and leave much to the imagination. Some seem to depict strange beings out of the imagination, and some seem to very closely resemble what many alleged alien abductees have described seeing under hypnosis. If that doesn't stir your imagination, wait till you hear this. In their homes, they built a hole into their floors. This hole served as an entrance to and from the underworld, known to them as the Third World. Is this a mystery, or is the answer simply hard to believe? I ask again the question I began with. Strangers from where?